Hello, my name is Darrell Coleman, and I'm a doctoral student at the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences at Case Western Reserve University. In this video, I will be talking about a mixed methods study that our research team conducted to understand how trauma, depression, and gender roles lead to intimate partner violence perpetration among a sample of predominantly low-income Black, Indigenous men of color. Adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood, such as child abuse and neglect. Previous studies on intimate partner violence, or IPV, have found that men who perpetrate IPV tend to have a higher number of ACEs. And subsequent trauma symptoms, such as PTSD and depressive symptoms. Previous research has also indicated that adhering to rigid gender norms, such as restricting one's expressions of emotions, could increase the likelihood of IPV perpetration among men. However, these studies were predominantly quantitative and limited our understanding on the diverse perspectives of how trauma and restrictive emotionality affect IPV perpetration among men. Moreover, there was a lack of research focusing on the experiences of low-income Black, Indigenous men of color, or BIMOC. Despite the high levels of trauma they experience due to the social economic marginalization that they experience. To address this gap, our study employed mixed methods to gain a comprehensive understanding on the complex, multifaceted aspects of the relationship between trauma, gender roles, and IPV perpetration among BIMOC. Specifically, our study was conducted in two phases. In phase one, we conducted ordinary least squares regression analysis with 67 men participating in a local batterer intervention program to examine whether PTSD symptoms, depression, and restrictive emotionality are associated with three different types of IPV perpetration: psychological, physical, and injury infliction. Men in phase one were predominantly BIMOC, with nearly 30% of them meeting the clinical threshold for PTSD and 22% of them meeting the clinical threshold for depression. Then in phase two, we facilitated 11 semi-structured interviews with 8 men who participated in phase one and conducted narrative analysis to explore how trauma symptoms, depression, and gender norms affect IPV perpetration. We used purposive sampling to recruit those who endorse depressive symptoms, trauma symptoms, and restrictive emotionality in the phase one survey, so that our analysis can capture an array of experiences related to these focal constructs. From the quantitative analysis in phase one, we found that men experiencing more severe PTSD symptoms were more likely to report higher frequency of all three types of IPV perpetration. We also found that men experiencing more severe depressive symptoms were more likely to report lower frequency of physical IPV perpetration. Depressive symptoms were not significantly associated with other types of IPV perpetration. And restrictive emotionality was not significantly associated with any type of IPV perpetration. In phase 2, nearly all participants acknowledged that childhood adversity, such as sexual abuse, influenced their emotional, behavioral, and relational health in adulthood. With trauma being unresolved due to the lack of social and systemic support, their sense of abandonment and betrayal stemming from the unresolved trauma served as a turning point for these men, leading them to diminished trust and restricted expressions of emotions with others. Diminished trust and restricted emotionality led them to isolate themselves as a way of coping with the stress from the past and current traumatic experiences. Ultimately, their deteriorated mental and relational health stemming from their unresolved childhood trauma and lack of healthy coping mechanisms led them to use manipulative, aggressive, and violent behaviors against their significant others at times of stress or conflict. These findings leave us with several implications for practice. First, clinicians working with low-income BIMOC in batterer intervention programs and other clinical settings should consider adopting a trauma-sensitive or a trauma-informed approach to mitigate the effects of unresolved trauma on IPV perpetration. Second, IPV interventions with low-income BIMOC should assess for depressive and PTSD symptoms and refer for specialized care to make sure that these trauma symptoms do not interfere with the effectiveness of the interventions. Third, clinicians may also want to focus on addressing the emotions that induce anger and shame, such as feelings of abandonment and betrayal. Finally, batterer intervention programs should focus on strengthening positive social support, such as a recovery group for program completers or involving family members in programming. This article can be used as a resource for teaching about long-lasting impact of traumatic experiences in early stages of life, particularly in the context of intergenerational transmission of violence. In conclusion, as all studies do, our study also has its own limitations, and we hope that future research can further extend our understanding of how trauma affects IPV perpetration. We would also be interested to hear from you about how this study resonates with your own work. For further discussion on this topic or any questions related to the study, please contact me, Rel Coleman. Check out the descriptions below this video for more information about this study and my contact information. Thank you for watching.